Well, hello there to you, my fabulous private practice owner. Today, I wanted to do a really quick but very important video for you that is going to be of great value. So if you've got the following two problems, you need to pay attention. One, do you need more clients to fill those calendars of your clinicians? And two, do you need more clinicians? If either of those two apply, keep listening. But let's go do this over on my iPad. Now, if you've seen my videos that include me scribbling on my iPad, yes, I use the word scribbling because that is what I do, you would know it ain't pretty. But you know what? It doesn't have to be pretty. As long as it makes sense and as long as it conveys the message that I'm here to convey to you, I am happy. So excuse the scribble. Let's have a look at what we're doing today. We are going to look at the following. We're going to look at how to build your audience. And by audience, this can be client audience or it can be clinician audience. And what we know is that if we can build those two audiences, what happens? This leads to increased market share. Now, as a business holder, that is a really important goal. So what do we need to do to build our audience? And we're going to start off in this example today, specifically looking at our client audience. And you can then take those principles and also apply it to clinician audience. But how do we do that? How do we build our client audience for this purpose of this example so that we can increase the market share of your private practice so that you can build a long-term, sustainable, and thriving business? So in order to build your audience, you can do it in one of three ways. So we're going to use our trusty old Venn diagram here. Now, the three ways to do this all starts with B's. How do you love that for, what's the word, alliteration? So you can do one of three things. You can either build your audience, or you can buy your audience, or you can borrow your audience. Build, buy, or borrow. And as you can see, the optimal thing to do, of course, is a combination of all of these. Let's do this. Let's make it a different color. Let's be nice and colorful. The pink. That is the sweet spot. The sweet spot is doing a bit of all three. Now, depending on various variables and additional factors, and depending on especially the level of private practice development your practice is in at right now, i.e. the size and the stage of growth that your practice is in, you might need to do a bit more build and then a bit more buy and then a bit more borrow. So you're going to move through the three, but ideally you need to do a little bit of all of them. It's about finding that sweet spot, but also finding which main circle is of primary importance to your practice right now. So what I want to do is give you some ideas of examples of what could be build, what could be buy, what could be borrow. Now, these aren't exhaustive, right? I'm just going to give you basically three examples of each. There are way more examples, but for the purpose of this exercise today, let's look at just the three that pops into my head the quickest. All right, let's have a look. Let's start by looking at build. So very often people are operating in the build part of this during the early stages. So the times when money is tight, right? Especially when you're starting your private practice, or maybe even you're in a group practice and money is tight, you're probably going to invest more time rather than money, and therefore you're going to be building. So an example of build is the good old networking. Okay, networking with other allied health professionals, networking with other referrals, such as, I should say, referrers, such as GPs, psychiatrists, pediatricians. So it's basically networking. The second example of build is, of course, no surprises here, our social media. So when you are posting on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, that is building your audience through social media. And then a third example in the build area is word of mouth. I'm sure there's a lot of practice owners out there, because people tell me this, they would say, hey, Gerda, I've actually built my practice mainly on word of mouth, right? So those practice owners has really drilled down on this specific strategy, but it's only one of three. So those are three examples of building your audience, which is free in terms of the moolah, the money, but of course it is not free in terms of your time. The next option then, talking about the moolah, i.e. the money, is buy. This is where you're actually putting dollars behind building your audience. So the easiest ones here that pop to mind, of course, is Google AdWords. So this is when you pay Google to show your ad to people when they are searching for, let's say, psychologists in your local area. Another example is Facebook ads, where you pay Facebook to show people your ad. And then the third example in buy is SEO. So that is search engine optimization. Now, I will say with SEO, you can do some of it, which will be part of build. But when you are actually using SEO properly, you're going to have to buy. You're going to have to put money behind paying an expert that can make sure you not only get onto page 1 of Google organically without paying Google for those Google AdWords, but consistently and irrespective of what happens with the Google algorithm. And unfortunately, as a practice owner, unless this was your previous job and you were in IT, you're not going to be able to do that without putting money behind it. So that is 3 examples of buying audience. Now, let's have a look at borrow. This is an interesting one for us. So some examples here. The first one is establishing strategic referral relationships, right? So this is where you're borrowing an audience. Maybe you're a psychology private practice and there is a occupational therapy practice in your local area, and you know they don't have psychs and you don't have OTs. You can establish that relationship and say, hey, we would love to get to know you, see what your values are, and if there's alignment, we would love to have a mutually beneficial strategic referral relationship, right? Now, of course, there's a lot more that goes into doing that whole thing and doing it right. I'm giving you more an idea of what build, buy, borrow is about today, rather than drilling down into how to implement each specific strategy. But that is what I mean with strategic referral relationship, okay? The second option here is, let's say if you are to be interviewed on a podcast. So basically, this is you in your capacity as a speaker. I should really just call this, let's do this, speaking. Because the interview on a podcast is basically an example of speaking, right? Or maybe you get invited to speak at your local chamber of commerce to all of the business owners there, so that you can tell them about stress and how to look after themselves and their team. And before you know it, your phone is ringing because they really loved what you said and they want to book in themselves or their team members in there. So this is where you get to borrow the audience from the chamber of commerce. You get to speak to them and they become clients. And then finally, another easy way to borrow is, for example, Facebook groups. Now, Facebook groups is different to what I have under build as social media, because a Facebook group could be where you are part of a group and the people in there, whether it's clients or clinicians, remember we can apply this to building our clinician audience as well, are already in there. So if you are allowed to go into this Facebook group and you can tell them about what you offer or this job that you have available, that is you borrowing the audience within that Facebook group in order to build your audience. Alrighty, cool. And that is it in a nutshell. I really wanted this video to be very succinct. And my goal is that this is going to help you and prompt you to start thinking, okay, which of these do I do really well? And which one have I been neglecting that is possibly on my radar next? And ultimately, you want a strategy that is appropriate for your level of prior practice development and your stage of growth, and one, of course, that you can implement consistently. And very importantly, you always want to be tracking the return on investing into these strategies by looking at the data. And as I said at the start, you can build, buy, and borrow to also build your clinician audience. So really ask yourself, how can you transfer this way of thinking into that branding for team and ultimately recruiting amazing talent to come into your private practice? Alrighty, we're going to leave it with that. As always, I love hearing from you. Let me know if you've got any thoughts, any input, anything that I missed that you can think of. And as always, I am here to help you build your very own self-running private practice. So if I can help, just flick me an email and let's have a chat. Lovely to connect with you again here. From me to you, it is bye for now.